Hello all and welcome back to another video. For you guys that don't know who I am, my name is Neil Henry. I help businesses with AI automations to enhance their daily workflows, saving them time. And in this video, I want to discuss 5 AI prompts attorneys actually use every week. I'm going to show you non-theoretical prompts, prompts which are very applicable to different use cases, and we're going to also explain the what and the whys, exactly how we create these prompts, what they accomplish, and why we draft them in that specific way. So a lot of time when attorneys and other people are utilizing AI, there's hallucination, there's variance in the outputs. And this is generally speaking due to the fact that we don't standardize the output. I've talked about in earlier videos about JSON structuring. For the sake of this video, we're not going to utilize JSON. It really depends on what exactly you're using, but in this case, whether you're using Claude, ChatGPT, another AI chat tool, these are just direct prompts which you can input there to derive the outputs. So first, I'm going to show you just the first prompt. And what I have here is my blog post. There's 5 separate prompts in here. We're going to go one by one through them, and I'll explain exactly why we compose it this way and what it aims to achieve. So the first one is client status update email, right? This one is when a client checks in asking where things stand, and we draft the response in a professional way, which we could relay back to them. So if the first thing that I would like to mention in this specific prompt, and these are all available copy and paste for your own disposal if you would like to use them yourself. The blog post will be linked down below in the description of the video. First thing I always like to do is impersonate the role of who we're trying to be. So in this case, we're telling the AI you're a practicing attorney. There are certain niche scenarios where you wouldn't do the impersonation at the beginning, but this already sets the tone of exactly the type of practice and role that the AI is taking on. After we do the impersonation, then we want to give a brief high-level overview of exactly what you're doing. So in this case, we're drafting a brief client update email. Following is the overall structure. So this is not necessarily the structure of the email, but this is the context which we would like to include in the email. So if we don't include this, there's going to be a lot of variance depending on the specific details. So by giving this, we feed it the context such as client name, the matter, the current status, the next steps, and the tone of voice. And this is all you can see. Personalized options. You could choose either formal or friendly or neutral, or maybe a combination of them. And these are all giving it the context. Afterwards, we say exactly what we want. Utilizing that context, we want to write a short email. It'll be 3 to 5 sentences long. Exactly what to include in that email, utilizing that context and everything else such as impersonation. And there you'll have your prompt. By providing it all these details, yes, can you just say write a brief client update email, and then it doesn't have all the context and structure, and you might give the AI the prompt this time, and then you're gonna have to adjust it afterwards with additional prompts. Now that is fine, but generally speaking, that adds time, and we want to make things as efficient as possible while still getting the job done. So that's kind of a little overview of the first prompt. Next, I want to go into the second prompt. So this is for case law summaries in plain English. So maybe you need to understand a holding quickly without reading a full opinion, or you need to explain it to a client. So this one you can see slightly different. In this case, we don't really have the impersonation. It really is dependent on the case, but in this case, because we're just giving it a very concrete action, in the case of summarize the following case holding for a general audience, this one doesn't necessarily need an impersonation, whereas in the one above, that's something that you may want to include. Now, it doesn't hurt to include it in the second one as well. That is very much up to you, and that won't necessarily lessen the output in this specific case, but also just making aware that sometimes it's redundant and unnecessary. So again, in this one, we're doing it in a different format than the first one, but we're telling exactly what to focus on in that summary. So details such as what the court decided, the why, and what it means practically. And then we're giving you here a little bit of the structure, such as what to not include. So this is something that you may, when having summaries, this is something that you may want to utilize when having it generate summaries. Maybe you want to show what to include and what not to include. So earlier on, we talk about what to focus on, and then here, we're not saying what not to focus on, but it's saying do not utilize legal jargon. So it's just dependent, of course. We're also telling it to keep the word count under 150, because if you don't prompt it that, then you could theoretically speaking get a word count of 1,000. And again, this gives us that variation. By defining the structure in advance, we avoid a lot of that variation. And then we include a few of the other details, but that's about it essentially for prompt 2. Next, we're going to go on to prompt number 3, pre-call prep notes. So you would utilize this in the case of you may have a client call an hour and want to walk in with a clear, established headline, so you're not sitting there scrambling all over the place. So this one, again, sometimes you impersonate there's different use cases. In the first one, this one we just gave a direct action. In the first one, we impersonated the attorney. In this one, we're talking about I. So these are just different ways to prompt it. You could utilize all 3, but in this case, we're talking about us, yourself particularly. So I have a call in X minutes, and this is exactly what I need. So first, we're going to provide the content, such as the client name, the matter type, what we need to cover, and then any additional open issues which need to be answered. And then again, the structure, and this is something that you notice in every prompt that we discussed so far, even though there's variation in the opening, impersonation, or the role, or just a direct action, such as in prompt 2. And this, every single prompt that you've seen so far, we've given the structure by which we want to output. And this, as I said, and I must reiterate, is one of the most important part for getting quality output from the AI. So things such as a 3-sentence summary, we want in the output a 3-sentence summary of where we are, the 3 most important things to cover on this call, and any questions. Let's say you were doing a job interview. This would be something similar, which you may prompt it, because that's exactly the type of context that you would want pre-call. And then just a few additional instructions, such as keep it short, just because we don't want it to feed us just a crazy amount of information. We want it brief, just so it can refresh us, give us what we need before the call. Not overall huge summary that takes us 3 hours to read. That's just hyperbole, but to kind of emphasize the point. And then now we're going to move on to prompt number 4. Meeting notes to task list. So this is the case of you may have finished a client call and you want to take the notes from that meeting and convert those into task afterwards so that you don't forget it. I have this in the tool I'm working with called NileLegal as well, in which a lot of these different tools will be included in that. So given those notes, we want to actually have a task list of things that we need to get done just for organizational purposes. So in this case, just because it's such a direct result, we don't need impersonation or anything. We're just saying, hey, convert these meeting notes into a task list. This is not even necessarily law specific. This is just generally speaking how you would prompt something like this. Just because we need a task list, we don't need impersonation. We still are, however, giving the structure just like all the previous ones. We're saying for each task we want it included what needs to be done, who is responsible, and any deadlines which were mentioned. So then afterwards, those raw notes would be inputted, and then the AI would structure the task accordingly with these key information. So again, the structure is everything. And then some additional disclaimers, which sometimes would be at the end of the prompt. That's essentially it for that one. It's a pretty short one. The final one is just opposing counsel response. So you may receive a letter or email from an opposing counsel and you need to draft a response. So we've showed responses in earlier prompts, but again, this is another prompt. And otherwise, the AI is just going to really help you expedite the response rather than typing it fully by hand. Now, still, the output of any AI response, you may want to double check, proofread everything over, and adjust it however accordingly, but it takes us about 80-90% of the way. Afterwards, it's just some minor edits, which you could either utilize the AI to make the edits, or you could edit it yourself afterwards by just feeding it in the additional context. So you can see in this one, we're actually going back to the impersonation. And the reason we're going back to the impersonation, this specific prompt, is because it is undertaking the role of what we want it to do. So in this case, you're the attorney drafting the response. So in this case, it makes sense that we want it to impersonate who you are, because the response, that email, is being sent from the perspective of you, not from the AI. There's sometimes when you want more of a generic third-party response, then you may not need impersonation. But because we're impersonating ourselves in this case, that is very important that we make mention of that at the beginning of the prompt. And then again, you can see after the impersonation, we then have the action which is taking place, drafting a response to opposing counsel. Afterwards, it just inputs their communication. It takes in your response, your tone, and then for this one, there's not so much structure. We are giving it inputs such as their communication, your position yourself, as well as the tone that you would like to respond in. Afterwards, we just give it the executable, telling it exactly what to do. Disclaimers such as keeping it factual and direct. Don't make any arguments beyond the scope And there is a little bit of structure here at the end about end with next steps or requests for response by a specific date if appropriate. So even in this one, where there's not as much structure, we still are structuring the inputs and providing a little bit of the structure to the output, although in this case, less structure is needed. But if you, for whatever reason, did need structure, then you can utilize some of the formatting from the previous prompts and inject those into this prompt as well. So these are just frameworks. This is kind of how I decided to generate these prompts, but you yourself could give it a try as well and see different outputs. If you have the prompt, if you've prompted this way with this input, then this is the output that appears from it. So you could sit there and experiment with that, but this article describes a lot of those steps, and I hope that I kind of enlightened you on some AI use cases, simple one-turn prompts, which could benefit your practice. So that's essentially it for the video. One final thing is just kind of re-emphasizing the pattern. All the prompts do the same thing in some regard. We're giving the model context, and then it's deriving us the output. We're telling it exactly what we want to return. And that's where I talked about the structure and how it's important to provide it the structure that you want. Whenever you're using vague prompts, when you put input vagueness, then you're going to get output that's vague as well. That's just how it works. So when we give it clear-cut input, we'll get clear-cut output. So that's, now again, none of this replaces attorney judgment. As I said, it's still your responsibility to fact check and proofread anything that the AI outputs. The AI is just a tool, but it doesn't replace an actual expert. So that's essentially it for the video. I hope that you guys learned something from this video. If you have any questions, just leave a comment down below. If you like the video, make sure to like it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in working with me, visit my website. It's linked down below in the description of the video. We could book a call whether you're looking for a custom solution, just general advice, help on prompting, or anything additional that you would like to talk about. And thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.